On August 20th, 2007, the History Channel broadcast its special,
The 9/11 Conspiracies, Fact or Fiction?
The program was produced by the History Channel and NBC News, and although it was promoted as an impartial debate between 9/11 truth researchers and their critics, what was aired was anything but impartial. First off, there were major conflicts of interest in the show.
Jim Miggs is the editor of Popular Mechanics magazine. In 2005, he and a staff of reporters decided to take on the factual and scientific claims made by members of the 9/11 conspiracy movement. The results were first published in a magazine article, then more fully developed in a book titled Debunking 9/11 Myths: Why Conspiracy Theories Can't Stand Up to the Facts.
The show never mentions that Popular Mechanics is owned by the pioneers of yellow journalism, the Hearst Corporation, who jointly own the History Channel with two major Defense Department suppliers, General Electric, who also owns NBC, and Disney. If one side of any debate is on the same payroll as the show's producers, then how impartial can that debate possibly be? The show quickly becomes a 2-hour advertisement for the Popular Mechanics book.
I think what Popular Mechanics did with the 9/11 conspiracy theory was just about one of the best things ever done.
But do the 9/11 researchers have a similar book?
David Ray Griffin is a retired professor of religion at the Claremont School of Theology in California.
David Ray Griffin has written a point-by-point rebuttal of the Popular Mechanics and NIST claims titled Debunking 9/11 Debunking. When introducing David Ray Griffin, you can see a copy of the book in the background, but they never mention the book which specifically addresses the Popular Mechanics attacks. But I guess telling the viewers about the book would have been fair. So with the show squarely in favor of Popular Mechanics, they certainly wouldn't need to stoop to underhanded tricks to misrepresent the truth researchers.
First things that surfaced after 9/11, the Jews did it.
One rumor coming out of the Middle East that 4,000 Jewish workers in the World Trade Center were told to stay home.
That then appears to have been picked up by a Lebanese TV station that often acts as a front for Hezbollah. They spun the information the way they wanted to do it, and then anti-Semites all over the world picked it up and they spun it their own way too.
The website shown here is not even a real website, but is a parody created by a group called You're the Man Now, Dog, and has no connection to 9/11 research. But this false connection to anti-Semitism was just the first of many attacks on researchers' credibility.
A lone individual with a set of pretty extravagant conspiratorial ideas about the world can sit in his basement, and on that website he can spread all these sorts of wild ideas with absolutely no control, no criticism, no evaluation, and no response.
They don't like ambiguity. They don't like having unanswered questions. So they write these apocalyptic conspiracy theories.
Just like with Holocaust denial and other conspiracy theorists, once you start looking up their facts, you find out that they're almost always wrong.
I do know, however, that they never have an engineering basis for their conclusions, and they virtually always ignore the facts, the physical evidence.
Not only does the show downplay the scientific credentials of 9/11 researchers they interviewed, they also ignore groups like Scholars for 9/11 Truth and websites like Patriots Question 9/11. This website lists hundreds of engineers, architects, professors, pilots, senior military intelligence and government officials, and 9/11 survivors and family members, all of which question the official story. It's an obvious attempt to make 9/11 researchers look like radical internet wackos. But when it comes to debunking the actual theories, the History Channel ignores information it itself had previously broadcast on the channel, including this interview by Frank DeMartini, who is the manager of the World Trade Center construction, discussing how the towers were designed to survive the impact of a large aircraft.
I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
When discussing the collapse of the towers, the program deliberately manipulates what facts are discussed and omits crucial evidence.
The fires burned at a temperature of about 1100 degrees in some cases.
that's sufficient to cause the steel to lose half its strength.
Former Underwriter Laboratories executive Kevin Ryan testified that his company had certified the steel in those towers to survive 2,000-degree temperatures for 3 hours. The South Tower fell in less than an hour. The steel in that building just did not have the time to reach the temperatures claimed by debunkers. The show did discuss at length the possibility of secondary explosives in the buildings.
There was a secondary explosion, probably a device either planted before or on the aircraft that did not explode until an hour later.
Again, they selectively left out certain witness testimony.
We made it outside, we made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated. If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
Sorry, is it the bomb? What's that? The bomb in the building started clearing out.
Coming on my radio. Get out of the area. Second tower coming around.
What time is the second tower?
Yeah,
There are things that happened inside the building, pieces coming loose as a result of the extreme impact, very well may have been interpreted as explosions also.
I think the accounts are people trying to figure out what was happening on one of the most chaotic days in American history.
They suggest that in the confusion of the day, the people could not recognize the sound of an explosion. Listen for yourself.
You want to call your mother or something?
Where could the idea of planted explosives in the buildings come from in the first place? How about NBC itself?
This was clearly, the way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way. How they accomplished this, we don't know.